The Pokemon franchise has had a bunch of amazing games since its first release of Pokemon Red and Blue in 1996. Ever since then, new generations of Pokemon have continued to release, but all on Nintendo's handheld systems, from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, the DS, and the 3DS. 2017 marked the release of Nintendo's newest generation, the Nintendo Switch, which merged both its handheld consumers and its console consumers to one system. And of course, with the system that's light years ahead in terms of capabilities, we finally have our newest Pokemon generation on a console, something that fans have dreamed of for years with Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. So how are they, and are they worth it? Now in terms of the content, Pokemon Sword and Shield has a pretty good amount of content. There's been a lot of new Pokemon that have been added into these games, there's a good amount of them, and there's lots of cool designs that I think most people will really like. The new gameplay feature of Pokemon Sword and Shield is called Dynamaxing, as well as Gigantamaxing, which involves your Pokemon becoming really big inside of stadiums as well as certain parts of the game, and I will admit, compared to like Mega Evolutions, this didn't seem all that interesting to me at first, and I wasn't really looking all that forward to it, but after I did get to play it and experience it for myself, it is pretty cool to see your Pokemon get really big inside of these stadiums, especially with the atmosphere with like all the people cheering and how excited they are. It is a pretty cool feature, and I am excited to see how it's going to work in terms of competitive play either, because it's also only going to be lasting for 3 turns when you do it, so it is a cool feature. While it isn't as interesting compared to Mega Evolutions in my opinion, I still had some fun with it, and I'll go into more detail with the gameplay as to why I think it was a good feature, but I still think that overall it was a pretty nice feature to have. By far the biggest new feature of Pokemon Sword and Shield is a brand new big area of the region called the Wild Area. Now this wild area is Game Freak's first attempt at creating an open world type of environment, and I will admit when I first got here I didn't think it was going to be all that exciting, but it was kind of fun when I got here to be able to walk in any direction that I would like and basically be able to freely move the camera and explore in all of these different areas, and it is cool because the wild area is actually split up into different biomes. And all of these biomes have different weather conditions that change every day, so one part of the wild area could be snowing and you'll find a lot of ice Pokemon there, but you could come back to that same area tomorrow and it'll be raining instead and you'll find some water Pokemon, so it was cool to be able to explore this entire area. It is a pretty vast area and there's a lot of hidden items there and things to explore, so it was a pretty cool experience. Now within the wild area is also a brand new feature called Max Raid Battles, where essentially you have to team up with some other people to take down a wild Dynamax Pokemon that's going to be Dynamax for the entire battle, and I will admit that this is actually one of the most fun features that they've ever incorporated into Pokemon, and the best part about this is that you can team up with some computers if you don't have anyone nearby, or if you've got some friends nearby with you in the same room, you can all team up with them, and if you've got friends that are across the internet or like in different parts of the world, you can give them a code and they can join you as well, and you can all team up together to take down this Pokemon. And I will admit that this was actually a lot of fun. There's a lot of strategy inside of these things, and especially like with some of the 5-star raids that incorporate some like really hard Pokemon, these max raid battles can get pretty difficult, and you definitely do have to come up with some good strategies with your friends to be able to take them down. Pokejobs are also another feature of these games, where you send out a team of Pokemon to handle a task, and they'll come back after a limited number of time and then give you some rewards for completing the task. It's a fun little addition that I think is pretty cool. Pokemon Camp is also another feature of these games, where essentially you can chill out with your Pokemon whenever you want as you're going through your adventure, and you can basically just click the Pokemon Camp option and chill out with all the Pokemon that are in your party, and you can do cool things with them like play with them and give them little toys and stuff. So I think that this is a pretty fun feature. Even if a lot of people aren't going to be using this feature a lot, I still think that it was a cool addition, and I think that it definitely is better than what they've done with like Pokemon and Me and things in the past. So I really do hope that they decide to keep this feature moving forward, because it is a cool feature. It's definitely nice to see you being able to interact with all your Pokemon. They definitely have some fun animations and do goofy things as well. So I definitely think that it was a good addition, and you can even make curry for them and have like things that increase their stats and performance. So overall, it was a nice thing to add. And so that's going to do it for all of the new features that are added into Pokemon Sword and Shield, but at the end of the day here, if we take a look at all of these features and compare it to other features that we've gotten in previous Pokemon games, as well as the amount of content that we've gotten in those games, you can definitely tell that there was a lot more content with previous Pokemon games. There is definitely less content inside of Sword and Shield. There's some fan favorite features that are missing, not to mention that I'm sure you guys know that over 500 Pokemon are just non-existent inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield. They won't be transferable from past Pokemon games, and they simply just don't exist inside of these games. And the thing here isn't the fact that this stuff is not inside of the games. That's not the problem. The problem is just that there isn't a lot of new content that makes up for all the stuff that we're losing. Like, we've lost over 500 Pokemon, more than half the Pokemon are not inside of Sword and Shield. There's many features that we're missing, and sure, we did get a lot of good new features, the wild area, Dynamaxing, and the Pokejobs and the Pokemon Camp, like the stuff that I talked about, but all of that stuff together does not seem to make up for all the stuff that we're losing. At least in my opinion. Maybe to you, you're totally fine with all these other features and missing all these other Pokemon, but to me, I don't think that having these features is worth it compared to all the stuff that we're losing. Moving into the gameplay, it's essentially the same as all previous Pokemon games. They really don't seem to be liking to changing up the formula a lot in terms of Pokemon. You essentially have the same type of adventure as previous Pokemon games, where you have to go down and beat a lot of these gym leaders in order to make yourself up to the top. It's essentially the same as we've always had. Now, there are many quality of life changes that I feel like just improve the gameplay experience a lot for many people. One of them is that you can already catch Pokemon pretty early within the game, and if you do have Pokemon that you've already caught, you can skip the catching tutorial. You don't have to watch that and learn how to catch a Pokemon, which is pretty nice. You've also got move deleters and move reminders in every single Pokemon Center throughout the region, so you can always get good move sets for your Pokemon, and you don't have to worry about finding those people like throughout the region. So there's little changes like that that I definitely feel like improve the gameplay by a good amount. Now, Pokemon Sword and Shield don't have voice acting, which isn't really a huge problem. It's just that some parts definitely did feel a little bit weird, because now that we are on a system like the Nintendo Switch, characters can be much more expressive, and you can even see like their mouths moving, and it's just kind of weird because you see the mouths moving but you don't actually hear anything, so it's definitely weird. There's even one spot of the game where I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's like one specific trainer who's going to be like singing a song and you don't hear anything because there's no voice acting, and it just doesn't feel like it really lines up or makes a lot of sense. But besides that, I mean, the no voice acting isn't a huge deal breaker, but it is something that I wish to be implemented in future games. Now, if there's one thing that I can say for a fact, it's that the gym battles inside of Sword and Shield are definitely the most exciting and hype gym battles that we have ever gotten in any Pokemon game. Like, the way that they set them up with the stadiums inside and having the gym leaders and the big crowds cheering and stuff, it's actually amazing. Like, I can definitely easily say that these are the most exciting gym battles that you will ever have in a Pokemon game. And the gym leaders this time around are actually one of my favorite parts of the entire game. They've all got their own amazing personalities and characteristics, and you can definitely see them expressing that as you're battling them. Like, there's going to be this one gym leader that you're going to meet named Rayhan, and whenever he throws his Dynamax Pokeball, his Rotom phone comes out and takes like a little selfie of him. There's a fire gym leader named Kebu, who whenever he throws his Dynamax Pokeball, his eyes will get like fire inside of them, and it's the little touches like that that add so much character to all of these gym leaders, and I really do like them. And speaking of the gyms, that is essentially what all of Pokemon Sword and Shield is, and that was kind of one of the things that I didn't like all that much, is that the game is literally all just focused about the gyms. There really isn't that much of a plot or like a story inside of these games. It really is just a sequence of events, and I would be willing to argue that it might even be more linear than the Kanto region, which we all know like doesn't really have that much of a story. But even compared to the Kanto region, this game literally is just all about the gyms. Like, I kid you not, you're gonna get out of a gym after beating the gym leader, and they're gonna say like, congratulations for beating this gym. Your next gym challenge awaits you inside of this city. And that's about it. From there, you're gonna explore maybe a route or two, get to like a new area, and then you're just gonna go right to that gym, and that's about it. There's really not much of a plot or any story, and that was definitely one of the things that I didn't like that much about the games. There really aren't any bad guys or antagonists, and I think that that wasn't really a good idea for these games, as it really didn't help with the plot, and I think that that's also one of the reasons why the game was so short. Pokemon Sword and Shield is definitely one of the shorter games inside of the franchise, and especially if you don't explore like all the routes and everything and just like go through the main story as fast as you can probably get the game done within like 15 or so hours, and so the game definitely is really short compared to other games. And the reason for this is just because of the way that the game is structured. Even in other Pokemon games like the Kanto region, you've got like the entire Team Rocket hideout in Celadon City, you've got invading Team Rocket inside of the Sylph building inside of Saffron City, and you've got things like that that add more playtime into your adventure. Even in like the Sinnoh region, once you get out of the second gym after beating Gardenia, you've got to explore like that entire Team Galactic building inside of Eterna City. You've got like all the Team Galactic headquarters that you can go through and explore. They even take over the lakes at some point, and you have to go to like Lake Acuity and all the other lakes and take down. And there's stuff like that that adds more playtime into your games. But because of how in Pokemon Sword and Shield, you essentially just get from one gym, just go to the next gym and go to the next gym, there's nothing that happens in between, and that's what cuts a lot of your playtime. There's also not a lot of lore in terms of like the Dynamax phenomenon and why does it exist and what's the reasoning behind it, as well as like the legendary Pokemon, and like there's really not that much that happens in the main story. Like I do know in the post game there is some stuff that happens about the legendary Pokemon, but like in terms of the main story there's really not anything that happens, and like there is some stuff that happens towards the end of the game, like right before the champion battle, and the thing about that though is that it really does feel like it just comes out of nowhere, and it was kind of like they just hit you at it like because they kind of needed to, like they forgot about it, and it just didn't feel like it made a lot of sense. And so that's why I feel like if there was some build up throughout the game, like if there was some build up with like the lore and the story about these Pokemon, then it would have definitely added a lot to when it actually happens during the game. But because there really isn't a lot of lore and backstory, it just didn't feel that right. Like really the only experience that I remember is like once you get to this one city called Hammerlock City, you and Sonia are gonna look at some old drawings together about like the heroes and how they use the sword and shield, and that kind of adds a little bit of lore to the game, but there just really isn't anything else besides that. And anytime something interesting does happen, you don't get to be a part of it. There's this one spot I remember where you're talking to Sonia, and all of a sudden like there's this big explosion sound that happens, and you're wondering like what's going on. You want to go and investigate and see what's happening, but before you even think about that, Leon's gonna run over and be like, oh no, what was that? Don't worry, let Sonia and the unbeatable champion handle this. We'll go and figure out what's going on there. You just worry about your gym challenge, and that's gonna be it. They're gonna send you off to go to your next gym, and essentially they're gonna go and handle whatever was going on, and you don't get to know about that at all. And that's kind of the thing there, like Sonia and Leon literally get to have a more exciting experience and adventure by exploring what's going on over there, and all you have to do is just these gyms over and over. That's literally it. You just go from one gym to the next gym. I also wish that there was some character development between some of the characters that you meet throughout your adventure, and really like the only character that I know that has a lot of development throughout the game is probably Hop. Like the Hop that you meet in the beginning of the game as your friend who really wants to become the next champion, who wants to take his brother's spot, he definitely has a lot of growth that he has throughout the adventure and trying to learn about his own identity and himself as a person, so I can definitely say that he's got some good changes that happen throughout the game. But like some of the other characters that you meet throughout the game, like Beat and Marnie, don't really get that much character development. You only meet them for a very few amount of times throughout the story as well. You don't really meet them all that much, and I really just wish that there was some more information provided for these characters. Like, why does Marnie want to become champion so badly? What is her motive? What is her intention? Like, what is her drive that's basically getting her? Like, you just get to learn a little bit about her and her brother throughout the game. Same thing for Bede, like you learn a little bit about how Bede's history, like he really doesn't have any parents or anything like that, and Chairman Rose kind of took him in, but like I really wish that they went into more detail about why Bede wants to become champion so badly for the chairman, and like they just really didn't do that, so I really wish that they just went into more detail with the characters. In terms of graphics, Pokemon Sword and Shield is easily the best looking Pokemon game that we've ever gotten, but because of how now it is on the Nintendo Switch, it can be compared to other games that are on the system, and when we do compare it to other AAA games that are on the Switch, like Super Mario Odyssey, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, as well as Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it doesn't really look as good as those games. And for the most part, a lot of the areas inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield look pretty good, especially in terms of like the towns like Whitehurst Town, and even in some of the big cities like Motostoke as well as Hammerlock, those all look really good. It's just some of the parts of the wild area that don't look all that good. There's definitely some parts where the ground textures aren't that good and the trees don't look all that appealing as well, but for the most part, overall the game looks pretty good. For a developer like Game Freak that's been developing handheld games for the past 20 or so years, it's definitely understandable that they wouldn't be ready to develop perfectly for a home console like the Nintendo Switch. In fact, I'd argue that some of the Pokemon games that we got back on like the handheld systems, like the DS, were probably some of the best looking games on the DS. I honestly think like some of the like cutscenes that we got to see back in the DS games that like took up both the screens, I think some of those were actually the best looking games on the entire system. But now that they're moving on to the Nintendo Switch, it definitely is much harder for them as it is a home console compared to handheld systems, so hopefully they do get some help for developing them with their future games. Pokemon Sword and Shield also suffers from something called pop-in, which happens whenever stuff just pops out of the background, and it doesn't seem all that good looking when you're actually playing through the game, because like you're gonna be walking through parts where I remember like you just walk a little bit forward and instantly a Charizard is just gonna pop out of the ground because you get close to it and it triggers when Charizard is close by, and it's just things like that that cut the immersion when you're inside of the game. The character animation is also not that good. There's spots where the NPCs will turn around and do like a 90-degree robotic turn before turning around. You'll even notice that there's one spot with like the legendary Pokemon where they're gonna turn around and do like a walking rotation before they actually run off, and it's just things like that that don't seem to look all that good. Then we've also got the stuff inside of battles, where the first thing is that the animations inside of the battle aren't really all that good, and I really wish that they could improve upon these. I mean, I think that Pokemon Battle Revolution is really one of the best examples in terms of good battle animations, and we can see like moves like Double Kick inside of Pokemon Battle Revolution look much more expressive and look really fluid compared to what we see in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And also another thing is in terms of the scaling, we know that some Pokemon are actually really big and some Pokemon are really small, but that doesn't seem to get expressed inside of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Pokemon like Wailord are actually the same size as a human when you're actually like looking next to them in battle, where we can see that in the past they've known how to scale up things properly, where Wailord is actually really big on the battlefield because it's a huge Pokemon. Now at the end of the day, are these things going to degrade your experience of Pokemon Sword and Shield? Of course not. You're still going to have the same amount of fun even if all these things were fixed, even if the textures were amazing, the environments looked great, the battle animations, the battle scaling, the pop-in, even if all of this was fixed, you're still going to have the same amount of fun. But the thing is, these are still problems with the graphics and they need to be acknowledged so that Game Freak can learn about them and hopefully improve them with their future games, because just because they don't actually impact your gameplay experience doesn't mean that they're completely acceptable. Moving into the soundtrack, Pokemon music is always really good, and that's still no different with Pokemon Sword and Shield. The soundtrack is really nice, and a lot of the location themes are actually really good, and because of how a lot of the important battles take place inside of these stadiums, you're going to notice that a lot of the battle themes also have chants and yelling that are incorporated into the background, and at first when you listen to it, it does feel kind of unusual and weird, because Pokemon music has never really been like this, but eventually you'll get really used to it and it actually feels really nice. I remember like when I heard the gym theme for the first time, there's a special theme that plays when the gym leader gets to their last Pokemon, and it has like a lot of chanting and yelling in the background, and when I heard this for the first time I was like, yeah, this doesn't really actually seem all that exciting. Like, I was really not digging the music at first, but once I got to like the 4th or 5th gym leader and I was getting really used to the music, I actually became a really big fan of it, because I could definitely feel the environment of being in like a stadium with all these fans chanting and yelling for you, so I definitely became a fan of it over time. It's definitely a music taste that you're going to acquire as you play more of the game. It's going to feel unusual at first, but at the end of the game, you're definitely going to love it. And finally, in terms of controls, Pokemon games always have very simple controls, and that's no different with Pokemon Sword and Shield. They've even made things easier with the game, like how running is actually incorporated right into your left joystick, so you don't even have to hold down like the B button as you had to do in past Pokemon games. It's actually really nice, and of course, the game just has some pretty simple controls like pressing A for selection and pressing B to go back. All in all, Pokemon Sword and Shield are pretty good games, and especially if you've enjoyed Pokemon games in the past, you're still going to have a lot of fun with Pokemon Sword and Shield on the Switch. There's still a lot of fun to be had, and even if you're thinking about coming back to the Pokemon franchise after being disconnected for a little bit, you're still going to feel right at home and similar to just how you've experienced with your old Pokemon games. But if you're the type of person who was looking forward to playing a Pokemon game on the Switch, hoping for like the way that Mario was revolutionized on the Switch with Super Mario Odyssey, and how Zelda was revolutionized with Breath of the Wild, Pokemon still quite isn't there yet with Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's still just another Pokemon game, but if you've enjoyed those games, you're still gonna have a lot of fun. And so there you go guys, that is my review for Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please be sure to click that like button, and also comment down below and let me know what you guys think of this. What did you guys like about Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield? What did you not like? What would you rate the game out of 10? Definitely be sure to comment down below and let me know. If you're new to this channel, then please be sure to subscribe. I'm definitely going to have some more Pokemon content in the future, so please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Click on the bell to become a part of the notification squad. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero so you can be featured in videos, and also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.